So performance management can result in several different outcomes for the business. Today we're going to look at three. So one of them that you've probably heard of before is redundancy. So an employee's position is no longer needed, so the business dismisses that employee. That is what redundancy is about. So it's not being fired, because when you're fired, it's about doing something wrong. It's about breaking some kind of code of conduct or law that's resulting in that loss of employment. Redundancy is just about that position that the employee held isn't actually needed anymore. It can't be sustained anymore. So the business needs to let go of that employee, or employees. Often it's just more than one in lots of cases for bigger organizations. So the employer is obligated to pay the employee to compensate for their job loss, because that employee needs to then go out and find another job, and so they're compensated for that sudden loss of their employment. So, for example, in during COVID-19, we had lots of examples of organizations that reduced staff members and made them redundant. Organizations were trying to streamline processes, save on money, and that resulted in redundancies. So, an example is the NRL, the National Rugby League. So they went from having two referees to one referee for each game. They had reductions in terms of the number of people who would go out and work with school kids to develop them and do training sessions and things like that. So there were a number of redundancies there. So redundancy can occur for lots of different reasons. COVID was one example, but you can also have technological changes. So if you've got automation, or technology that can take over and do the work of people, then people may not be needed anymore. If a business restructures, merges with another organization, or acquires or is acquired by another organization, those will all have an impact and potentially result in redundancies. And also just a business downturn. If a business is struggling, then they may not be able to continue to employ people and pay their salaries or wages. So that will also result in potential redundancies. So how to handle a redundancy? It's really important that management, again, is responsible here. They need to plan and implement the process really well. It shouldn't just be a really quick kind of decision that doesn't have a great deal of thought behind it, because in order to make it an effective process, you have to avoid trauma to the staff that are still in the organization. You have to communicate openly and clearly to make sure everyone's on the same page, to avoid sort of rumors and misinformation from spreading about the reasoning behind the redundancies and things like that. You also have to just treat redundant employees with respect and dignity. It can be really tricky when you lose a job, and so that needs to be handled really well to make sure those staff members are looked after. So another outcome that could result from business transformation um, and performance management is retraining. So when employees are taught more about the activities they need to perform as part of their job, that is retraining. So this could also mean entirely new skills are necessary, or it could be that they just need more training on the existing things that they're already doing. So that's going to depend on the business and what's happening in the market. So an example is if you've got a supermarket and you've got employees who work at the checkout, and perhaps that business is going to bring in a new sort of offering with a cafe as part of the supermarket, then you may need to retrain employees so they can uh, do the barista work that's required, for example. Um, Also, if you've got different technologies that are coming in, then employees will need to know about those technologies and how to work with them as well. So there are different benefits and different disadvantages for both employees and businesses as well. So let's have a look at what we've got here. So some benefits to employees. Obviously, you've got updated skills and you've got continuous learning for employees, which is always good. Um, the employee's skill set is developed, and that can improve workplace outcomes and the motivation that employees feel. If the business is showing that it's investing in employees and wanting to help them thrive in their roles, then that can result in a better organizational culture and relationship between management and all the employees who are working in that organization. Then some benefits to business. We've got increasing productivity, and then that can also have flow-ons with increasing the products and the services provided, the sort of value and the efficiency and the effectiveness of those products and services, and then that can result, of course, in more income. And then having more highly skilled employees can just increase efficiencies and, of course, the bottom line in terms of increasing the revenue. There are some disadvantages as well. So you could have resistance to change here as well. Employees may not want to participate in retraining programs for whatever reason. Maybe they uh, really like the traditional way of performing their role and they're not interested in a new technology that the business wants to implement. Um, Retraining may also require employees to work longer hours to do that upskilling, and so that can have an impact on their work-life balance, and they may not be available, all those sorts of logistical considerations. And then, of course, disadvantages to businesses. Retraining can be expensive and it may not always result in what the business wanted to achieve. So, if a business does internal retraining, then it's putting its own resources, its own time of high level employees to manage that retraining. If it's outsourced, then of course the business is going to have to pay for that outsourcing. So regardless of what strategy the business uses, it will be putting resources towards that retraining, and they would definitely want to get a positive result from that to get a bit of a return on investment. Retraining can also hinder a workplace from recruiting new people. So if you've just done all of this new training for employees, and then you are needing to hire new people who don't have that training, that can be really tricky. You've just invested in all of this training for existing employees, and then you wanting to hire, and every candidate that has applied for the position doesn't already have that training. So that can mean that you've got growth perhaps from training people, increased productivity, and increased profits as well. Maybe you then need to expand because you're having greater success. But then, in order to expand, you want more people, but those people are not not trained. So you've got this idea that you can have positive impacts, but then those positive impacts can be hindered by those negatives as well. So our third and final one in terms of the results of performance management in this case is development. So it can be tricky to understand the difference between retraining and development. This is something that we usually hear as just one single unit, retraining and development as one thing. But in terms of development, it's more of a one-on-one thing with each employee. So each employee is establishing a plan with their employer that's going to allow them to develop in their career and improve their ability to perform in their role in the business. So developing in terms of career and the different tools that people need to advance in their career. Whereas retraining is about skills and it's usually a broader thing, talking about all employees or a whole series of employees getting new training to learn new skills for their roles.